Welcome back to Flashback Files, where we help students, recent grads, and young professionals reflect on how early experiences shape confidence, identity, and the way we think about the future. Today's conversation is about what it looks like to follow a path that doesn't stay in one lane, and how some of the most important decisions you make early on aren't always about having the perfect plan, but about learning how to adapt as that plan evolves. My guest today is Yvonne. Yvonne began her journey in engineering, studying at McMaster University, before starting her career at Imperial Oil, where she spent over a decade moving across technical, commercial, and leadership roles. Along the way, she built a foundation not just in problem solving, but in understanding people, business, and how decisions scale beyond the individual level. Since then, she's continued to evolve her career into category and business leadership roles at Canadian Tire, where she's responsible for shaping strategy across major product categories and leading teams in a fast moving retail environment. But what makes Yvonne's story interesting isn't just the role she's had, it's how she's navigated the transitions between them. From having multiple opportunities early in her career to learning how to prioritize in high pressure environments to building relationships that shape long term growth, her path reflects a series of decisions that many people face, but don't always talk about openly. In this conversation, we will talk about how to think through big career decisions when you don't have all the information, and the difference between working hard and working smart, and why some of the things we overlook early on, whether it's relationships, experiences, or even how we spend our time, can end up shaping us more than we expect. Yvonne, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me, Josh. I'm excited.
Okay, Yvonne, we're going to get right into it. Can you take us back to early Yvonne? What were you like as a kid?
Yeah, it's going way back. I don't know if I thought so deeply back then about who I would be. I think as a kid, I was pretty outgoing, I would say. I was pretty easy, I guess, in terms of I did everything, tried everything, got along with kind of everyone. I was kind of jack of all trades even as a kid, and I think I continue to be that way. So, but yeah, definitely at that age, I had no idea what I would do.
And when you say you got involved in different things, what did that look like in terms of hobbies?
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I just remember in school just, joining sports teams. I wasn't that good, but I joined basketball, I did badminton, I was on the swim team, track and field, cross country, and then even into, like, the music and art side, so I did choir, like jazz choir, did, like, school musicals, so it's kind of all over the place. I just kind of, I think, have always been.
Cool. It's like a well-rounded child, it sounds like.
Kind of, yeah. Though I do wish I did a bit more kind of competitive sports, like having kids now and they're going through it. I do wish I had a bit more of that outside of school. Like inside of school, it's fine. I would say it's a low barrier to entry. When you're doing like true competitive sports in the community, that's like you got to try out. It's a much bigger hill to climb.
Yeah, and lots of lessons that can
Yes.
come along with even just trying out for something and not
Yes.
necessarily making it, as an
Exactly.
example. Yeah. Okay, so let's go into high school, Yvonne. Let's put yourself in the frame of mind where you're entertaining the idea of what work or a career might look like. Did you have a moment in time in high school where you were thinking, okay, I'm going to go to school for engineering? Was it early in the high school career? Did it take some time for you to figure that out? Can you let us know your thought processes as it came to your career?
Yeah, I would say it wasn't as structured maybe as you would think. I think early in high school, no, I didn't really have a clear idea, although I did have an idea of kind of like what lane, I guess, if you want to put it that way. So I knew I kind of didn't want to do the kind of the arts side of things. I was more focused on the sciences and the math. So I kind of structured my courses that way, right? So I was taking kind of all those sorts of courses just so that it opens up all the doors when I get kind of closer to the time. I know in grade kind of 11 and 12 is when you have to get a bit more prescriptive on what you want to do. And our day and age, right, Josh, we had 13 our OAC. So we had to kind of figure out what we wanted to do earlier. So I would owe that to my dad. That was totally my dad's guidance. I have a very vivid memory of like sitting at the kitchen table with him And we were kind of like mapping out what I was interested in, slash what would be the most opportunities. I think interest is one thing, but at that point, it was like more practical of like, okay, cool, like you like this, but is this going to be career for you? So I do remember having memories of mapping out, okay, like kind of almost process of elimination. Like, okay, I don't want to do like, I was like, oh, I don't want to be a doctor. Like, I don't want to go down that path. So that crosses out all this. So I don't want to do this, cross all that stuff out. And then kind of landed in engineering. I think my dad also, he's not an engineer, but he did kind of, I would say college level engineering. And that's kind of what he did his whole career, like project management in an engineering field. So I think that was definitely a big influence for me, was just his background and what he saw. Like he just saw in his work and his day to day, somebody with an engineering degree and what they're able to do. So
Right. Okay. So you had your dad in your corner in terms of helping you navigate all of this. All right. So it's not an easy program to get into, which would suggest that you probably did well in school. I know you did well in school. I was always fascinated by the kids that did really well in school. And I was always curious to know from your perspective, how much of it was being pushed by your parents versus having the initiative to do well. And I mean, as younger children, we're always somewhat pushed to do the work, but there has to be a handoff where you become independent, whether it's in high school or university. So, can you just help me understand when that moment might have happened for you in terms of being more independent?
it's interesting you say that because I think now with my kids, they're still young, but I feel like I'm way more involved, I would say, in terms of like the homework and all that kind of stuff than my parents were. Like they obviously were kind of checking in, but they weren't sitting beside me and kind of making sure things were done, which I feel like our generation is a bit more hands-on that in that space. So I don't know. I think I would say it's part like, okay, sure, I had some smarts, but I had to work at it. You talk about Tom, like he's very different. So I went to university with him. He is naturally really smart and he doesn't need to work at it that much, right? So I think I realized that in high school quite early on, like I'm smart, but like I wasn't as smart as my sister, let's say, right? Like I had to really work at it in terms of like make sure I get the work done, paying attention, all that good stuff. And that I think it's the discipline that I have. It's not necessarily that I'm a brainiac. I don't think it's that. I just have the discipline. But high school is very different from university. Like in high school, you're right. I got really good marks. I thought that was hard. And then when I did, when I started university in first year, I remember it was very, very hard. Like to the point where like there were some courses where I had like D's. I'd never had a D in my whole life, right? Like I had like all the A's, like it was like so that was actually a eye-opening experience for me because I realized I had to actually change the way I studied. Because in university, the thing with engineering, it's yes, it's hard, but it's also the volume of work. It's a lot of stuff going on. And the first 2 years of university, I was doing the same way I would do in high school, where it's like learning everything, reading everything the professor or teacher's giving you, doing all your homework, but you can't actually do that in university. So it was kind of later on in third year and so forth, where I realized it's kind of like you got to kind of do 80% of it. And it's okay. You can't do all of it because you just physically can't get through it all. So
Was that a tough adjustment for you?
it was, yeah, yeah. First year was, I think for a lot of people, unless you were like really, really smart. We had some of those kids in the class still got A's, but a lot of us like were struggling. Like we're getting C's and D's, and like we're like, what? Like this is a bit of a rude awakening, but I think that's kind of reality, right? You have to learn to adjust. I think that's the purpose of university is not just like here's your degree. It's like you're becoming an adult, and you kind of have to find the strategies that are going to serve you for work. It's like a prequel to your career.
Absolutely. When it comes to we're skipping ahead and I might go back, so just follow me. But what point did you realize that your career might not follow a straight engineering only trajectory?
Yeah, definitely have not had straight trajectory. Still don't have a straight trajectory. Yeah, in your intro, you did say, I started at Imperial Oil in oil and gas, very traditional work. I think it did that for about 3 or 4 years and really hard stuff, like very technical. But I realized I was missing a whole business side. Like I had no idea about the business side from finance, accounting to marketing to all that. It's just not something you were exposed to. So I went and got my MBA. And from there, I wanted to kind of see where that would lead me, because I think that was a missing piece for me. So at that point, I knew like, hey, I'm not going down this technical engineering path. I went kind of the other way and I haven't looked back. So I haven't really done engineering work since that time, since kind of 5 years. After 5 years of my career, I've kind of switched to the business side. Yeah.
And to that point, you've had exposure to engineering now, sales, category management, marketing. If you were to zoom out of those roles, is there a thread that connects all of it? Do you see a consistent theme across the different roles you've held?
It's interesting. I think the consistency is just, it's like a toolkit, right? Like you have to continue to build in your career into the toolbox. So I don't know if there's consistency, but I would say you're like stepping stones as you go on. So whatever my last role or even 10 years ago, that kind of carries through with me today. I mean, each role is like teaching me a different thing, right? So you mentioned sales. I did that for 4 years. That was really different. That was my first time doing sales. I had just kind of done my MBA. So that was a big change for me. That was really hard. And I don't know sales now, but now I'm on the buying side. And so I have the perspective when I was in sales, right? So again, like it comes with me and I have that perspective of like, I know why they're doing that. I know why they're saying that. I know this game. So and that's kind of how it is, right? Like it's just your career may not be linear, mine is not. But again, I'm like a jack of all trades. It continues on now as an adult. I realize that. Like it just I'm doing different things all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, lifelong learning. It's so much
Yeah.
more fun that way instead of just being in your comfort zone all the time. Jeez.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so we talked about Tom. I mentioned going back to university for a second. So when he was on the show, we talked about navigating relationships. So boyfriend, girlfriend in university. You had a very demanding program. Each of you were in that program. What do you remember about balancing school life and your relationship during that time?
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I were friends all during university, right? And we didn't actually start officially dating till our last year of university. So I wouldn't say I had to manage that at that time with him. But I think by the time we were in our final year, we both kind of we were near the end, right? We knew we kind of had to get through this. We had to still get the best marks we can in terms of for job prospects and stuff like that. So for me, it was never a conflict or a roadblock of being in a relationship, but obviously it can be. I would say for me, I always have prioritized school because you come so far. And when so ours was a 5 year program. And so by the fifth year, it's like, you know, what's happening or you're trying to get a job. So let's not mess around and like, get bad marks and all that kind of stuff. So my priority was always school and I think he knew that and he was the same. We were just trying to get through it.
Right. So, from what I understand, you were in a pretty enviable position come graduation. Some of the people I've spoken on this podcast are just looking for a job. Anybody they'll take the opportunity. In your case, from what I understand, you had multiple job offers. Is that true? Just want to make
Yes.
sure it's true. Okay. So, looking back now, how did you evaluate those opportunities at the time,
Yeah.
knowing maybe very limited about the
Yeah.
career market?
For sure. Yeah. I would say, yes, I would say everything in career is luck and timing. And obviously, you got to have the, like foundational stuff there. So for me, like I think I had multiple job offers because I did an internship program. So between my fourth and fifth year, a lot of my friends, we all took that year off. And we all got basically a year and a half job internship. Right. So I did that with Imperial Oil. And so I had really good work experience. A year and a half is a pretty good amount of time. Like some people spend one job in that amount of time. So I think that really helped my resume. So when I applied for roles coming out of school, that was the main reason that I'm going to attribute to that. But in terms of evaluating, yeah, looking back, I wish at that time I had somebody kind of helping me with that because I think for me I had spent my 6 years away from home. I went to McMaster. I lived at that time in the east side of the city in Durham, and I picked the role with Imperial Oil because it's based out of Toronto. That was one big thing for me, so I wanted to get back closer to home. want to be back in Toronto. And the other piece was they were paying the most. So at that time, you're a student, you got debt, whatever. So I picked that. But if I had to go back in time, I might have made a slightly different decision. So I had an offer from Frito-Lay or PepsiCo in their Cambridge plant where they make chips, doing kind of operations, manufacturing stuff. And actually, I love that stuff. I still do to this day. I love process. I love like being in a plant. So if I had to go back in time, actually, I think I might have picked that because if I looked from a long term perspective in terms of like the company of PepsiCo and the brands they manage, like now that I'm in business, I feel like that probably would have served me better. But I think that's just kind of how life works, right? It's like can't really go back because you never know. Who knows what would have happened? But now in this state, if I look back, I wish I'd kind of thought that through in terms of career and long term decision and how working for a specific company could open different doors. Imperial Oil is very oil and gas. It's very specific to that industry. Staying in that industry was obviously possible, but not guaranteed, right? So
Right. I hope this question comes out the right way and it's not too difficult, but I'm trying to think about the person that might be in the exact same position for you. Multiple job offers. There is the immediate need. You touched on something very relevant, which is student debt, wanting to make money right away.
mm,
Is there anything in terms of what you might offer as advice to create space between the opportunity, the desire to make a lot of money right away?
mhm. Yeah, I think I would have yeah, I would have focused on all the different aspects. Like the pay is one thing, right? I think when you're coming out of school and you're first getting your first real job, you're like, this is it, right? But you got to ask the right questions. So, like in an interview, I was super young then. I never even asked about career path. Right now, obviously, I would. If I was looking for another role, I would have asked, what's the career path from here? What are the opportunities? I didn't ask those questions that I wish I had. And like taking that one role just for that pay is very short term, right? Because you might be in that role for a year, 2 years, 3 years, but hey, if I had gone somewhere else, who knows? You might have, progressed quicker in a different organization based on that structure. And the pay is not even the question anymore because you're going to get it a different way, right? So I wish I had asked some more questions in terms of long term vision with a specific company. And I wish I'd kind of looked a little bit more about the industry and opportunities just outside of that location, right? Obviously, that was in Cambridge. I think I alluded, like, I wanted to be back in Toronto, but hey, like, they have a head office in Mississauga. I don't know if it's still there, but at the time it was there, right? Like, that's not even something I even thought about. Like, hey, obviously I can work at this plant for a few years and I'm sure job opportunities can come up in Mississauga. And here we go. I'm back in the GTA, right? So again, short term that didn't really think through at that time.
Okay, cool. Good, good, good advice. When you were in university, there's, I guess, two forms of studying. There's deep understanding or studying smart. You kind of alluded to learning 80% of the work, and you can't know everything
Yeah,
100%.
pretty
Can
much.
you maybe double click on deep understanding and studying smart, and maybe which of those two might possibly be showing up in what you do today?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So yeah, like I mentioned, like early couple of years, I was doing kind of the process I would have done in school, like in high school and so forth, where it's like you learn everything, you get tested on it, and it's fun. That's what you do. But I soon realized like I can't. And that's why I wasn't getting the greatest marks because I was trying to cover everything and I was trying to learn everything, but you just don't have the capacity. And then what ends up happening is you actually don't get deep understanding because you're surface kind of trying to cover everything surface based, right? So I switched to this kind of like you mentioned, smart learning, where it's like you have to, and it takes time to figure that out, right? Like what is actually relevant and what is actually important in that subject and get the core of that down and all the other extraneous things, it's fine. Like you're not going to be able to get everything. And that was the thing with engineering. It's like you just really can't unless you're super, super smart, which I wasn't. So yeah, smart learning is something really important and it transcribes to work. So same thing in work, right? So we're not studying, but you're probably the same. Like the workload is a lot. It keeps going up and there is more work to do than hours in the day. So I have to prioritize same thing on my day on like what's the prioritization that gives me the biggest benefit. And so I pick and choose again where to focus my, as my boss told me the other day, kilojoules of energy. And I love that. I'm using that. So, like, where are you using your kilojoules of energy and make sure it's in the right spaces. So, yeah.
I like that. I might take it myself.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Was there a moment in your career where you might have realized I don't need to know everything, I just need to know what matters? So if you think about a Imperial, maybe old habits die hard. So was it in the role that you're today where you're only readopting that, or did you carry it forward into your career immediately?
Yeah, I think early in the career it's tough. Again, you're like a student again, right? You are learning how to work. How you work in university is very different in the professional world, right? And so the early days of working, same. I was trying to kind of doing everything, following whatever was being instructed to me. But I think as you go through your career, you realize, yes, that's important, but it's more important that you are working on things that are impactful and that is valuable to the organization and to the group and to your manager. So work is art, right? Because I think we all know there's a bit of politics in working in an organization. So, you have to do your work right and do it well, but there's also a bit of like make sure the right people are noticing and are aware of what you're doing, because that at the end of the day, humans are making decisions on your career move. And as much as you want to control it, it's really sometimes not in your control. So you need to make sure you're in the right spaces and in the right rooms.
Right. So I feel I might know the answer to this, but I just want to make sure you started in the technical space and then moved into commercial and leadership roles. What gave you the confidence to make the shift?
I think so for me, the work is not hard. I would say the work is never hard for most people. So going from like a technical space into a business space, the MBA for sure was a huge unlock for me. I think that was obviously the key. That's why I did it. I was like, okay, yeah, I could put my hand up and say, "Hey, I wanna do a business role at Imperial." They probably would have entertained it and been like, "You sure? Okay, cool. We'll give you this opportunity." But I had done no business roles. Even in high school, I'd never done accounting, I'd never done anything. So I had 0 knowledge besides kind of what you hear, "Oh, okay, balance sheets," and all this kind of fun stuff, which I don't do now at all. That's Tom's world. But, I took the MBA to give me that confidence, and give me a chance to think about, is this what I want to do? Is this the right path? And then from there, kind of dove in. So, yeah.
How far into your career did you do your MBA?
So 5 years. I was working for about 5 years, and then I took a full time leave of absence. So I didn't do it part time. So kudos to those people that work and do their MBA like yourself. But I just didn't. I took a leave of absence and focused on the MBA.
Okay, I want to double down on that because really there's a bit of a career shift possibly. You went to university for a certain space, engineering. So I'm thinking about those maybe adults that aren't necessarily young adults, but are thinking about making a career shift. Can you walk us through maybe some of the feelings and thoughts that you had about, okay, this is the next step I'm going to take with my career? Engineering might be perceived as your identity leading up to that point, but how did you walk through that with yourself? And I know Tom was your partner at the time. Can you just talk about that journey for a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question because yeah, you're right. Like my identity was, I'm an engineer, kind of everyone knew that, family and friends, at work and etc. And there's a slight bit of mourning actually, because doing my MBA, it's like you're changed your identity now. But I was very purposeful in what I took because I know that an MBA and engineering together, that combination is done a lot. And it is very relevant to each other. So that kind of gave me like the comfort of, hey, okay, maybe I'll continue in engineering or maybe I'll go fully into business, but it's okay. They're relatable. And now in the stage of my career, the engineering side, yes, I don't do technical engineering, but it's still with me a lot. So engineering teaches you, besides the technical stuff, because nobody ever does that in the real world, it teaches you how to think, I would say, and how to process things. So that structure is still with me in terms of how I troubleshoot, problem solve, how I do data analytics. Like that is still inside me, and that is coming through in every role that I'm doing now.
Tom uses the term critical thinking a lot. Is that what you might be getting at with the thinking
Yeah.
in engineering?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you have an issue or a problem, and it can be a business issue, it can be a technical issue, whatever it is, but it's how your brain structures around the analysis or critical thinking about it, and trying to kind of thinking outside of the box is something that I think just comes naturally, I think, and I think that came from school for sure.
So what do people maybe misunderstand about moving between technical and business roles?
I would say it's difficult, to be honest. Like I went straight from pure technical into pure business. So my first role coming out of my MBA was category management, not to this level, but it was is similar. I was doing some sort of buying role, managing vendors. I had never done any of that. And so school is great. We all go to school, and we get the degree or the diploma or certificate or whatever, but it doesn't really teach you how to work. So that transition was quite difficult for me because I even though I had worked for 5 years, it was a different side of my brain, I guess, I had to use, right? Like the technical space, very technical. I'm talking there's calculations, there's that kind of stuff. It's very black and white. When I went to the business side, it's not. It's very gray, actually. And so you are having to use different skills, your communication skills, the way you negotiate in a day-to-day atmosphere. Strategic thinking wasn't stuff that we learned in engineering. And that's stuff I learned in my MBA. So like I had to kind of learn all that on the go, like I was first time working.
It's almost
That
like art versus
transition part.
science.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, so the first few years was difficult. Like I had to really switch. Now I'm kind of going in between both worlds. Like my engineering and that whole process structure side of me is becoming is really relevant. And I think that differentiates me in the workplace. Like that's the reason I got the role at Canadian Tire was they wanted somebody from the industry. They wanted somebody that would understand the products. I was doing automotive fluids, which is a kind of technical product in terms of what that is, even though I'd never really dealt with it, but I would be able to learn it very easily. So that came to play kind of later on in my career, the engineering side.
How do you see people or relationships shaping the trajectory of your career?
It's actually everything now. So it's everything because I would say I'm mid-career, right? I think everyone knows like, hey, that person could do the job. They know what to do. It's not like the work is challenging, but it's how you are coming across that is important, right? So relationships are huge internally. And I think it's in any company, it's very important because if you want to move up in an organization, you need somebody in your corner. Like these decisions on who's moving into what role are behind closed doors. And it's happening all the time. And it's happening either structurally or organically, right? So the relationships you build either at the same level as you or above you or below you is really important because all those factors are are part of your career journey. So you never know the relationships you make, and it can be a casual conversation, as they say about the water cooler. Sometimes those conversations are ones that are the gems in your career, actually, because then it's like later on that person, remembers you or had a conversation. Like, yeah, yeah, I know that person. Like, cool. So relationships are key when you work. Very, very important.
I agree. And that sounds like it's from an internal lens. How about external networking? How does networking come to you when you're maybe because you travel quite a bit or you did in your past roles? What does that look like in terms of meeting somebody new and going through that networking exchange?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, when I was trying to find the next job, like the next company, sorry, like before I came to Canadian Tire, I was obviously very actively, LinkedIn and reaching out to old classmates, even that I hadn't talked to in, 5 to 10 years. And I wasn't embarrassed to do that. Like that's kind of the point of your network. I remember joining some kind of like mentorship program at the time and had like a mentor that was totally outside of the industry. So I did leverage that relationship in terms of kind of trying to figure out where I wanted to go next. I will transparently say now that I'm in Canadian Tire and I'm still enjoying it and I'm still here. It's been 5 years. I haven't done as much of a good job in terms of the external network. I mean, they're still part of the network, but I wouldn't say I'm actively engaging with them. But networking is important for sure. I would say even my day to day now, I have a lot of vendors, so a lot of external companies that I'm dealing with. And that is a network that I have built because I'm doing that day to day. So I'm working with a lot of big brands. And again, it's like that thought of you never know where that leads you to. So that is your network that is growing throughout your years. I think that you kind of it's like a plant behind me, right? Like you gotta nurture it and keep it going. And at some point it blooms or it doesn't. That's okay, but it's something you have to work on.
Absolutely. And not shy away from it. I know sometimes, I mean, early for me, it was awkward.
It is awkward for sure.
You touched on a mentor that you help bounce ideas off of, that sort of thing. But was there a key person or a mentor that significantly changed your path in your career? Can you point it down to an occasion? Or?
No, I wouldn't say it was a single person. I think early on, yeah, like I definitely had people at my, at the organization I was with where I was talking, about career journey. I would say now I wouldn't say I have a single person. I kind of have multiple people depending on what's happening. That could be my boss, could be my boss's boss, it could be a coworker. Tom is one, obviously, my parents, all that kind of stuff, friends. So it fluxes, I think, depending on what's going on. I would say the biggest for me is Tom. Like that's probably the biggest person I'm bouncing career questions off of. And obviously he's going to be the most honest because everyone else might sugarcoat it. Let's be honest, even your own family will sugarcoat things to you. So I think as long as you have a person that you know is going to give it to you straight, and maybe it's Tom for you too, Josh. Like I could see that for sure. That's what's important. But yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of me going through it, and I'm pretty, I would say, independent thinking. And if I'm down to kind of like the final decision, that's when I might do a little check. But I think the journey through it, I kind of do it on my own.
Yes, Tom has definitely been the voice of reason over the career in a couple of different areas. Um, when you think about somebody early in their career, what do you think is one thing they can do to build meaningful connections, whether internally or externally?
Yeah, I think early in your career, like you need to really focus on that, right? So you need to actively reach out in your company to meet with people. And you'd be surprised, although it feels awkward, but you'd be surprised. There's not a single person that would say no to like a coffee chat, right? So when I first joined Canadian Tire, I was really new, rare to have somebody. Now it's not so much, but at that time was quite rare to have an external person come in into that kind of role. Most people kind of started straight out of university and kind of worked their way up. So I did not have any history there, right? So I really had to focus on building my network. So I booked coffee chats with um, people that I wanted to get to know, names that had popped up in conversations where I was like, okay, that person's important. Like, for whatever reason, either they've been here a while, they're a senior, they're a decision maker, whatever it is. So I did a lot of that, just trying to get to know people, expand my network, and also just have them know me too, right? 'Cause again, back to the network of getting your name out there. It's really important. So early in your career, but even early in a new organization, right, is super important because those networks come back to you for sure.
Yeah, and you're touching on it. What I find often takes place is we start to think about networking when we need something, when we need the job, or we need to
Yes.
start to interview. But if,
Mhm.
like you said, you're start planting the seeds now when you don't need anything, it's a more authentic. You're trying to learn about the other person. They can obviously
Yeah.
you can share about yourself, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. It's a little awkward when when you're looking for a role and then at that time you are reaching out to them. It's very evident at that point. So, the sooner you can figure out, where you want to go in that company or maybe what group you want to go to, like start learning about that group. And the best is actually having coffee chats with people that are at your level, because that's like low stress. It's super casual. Usually that person is pretty honest about the work they're doing, the goods and the bads. And you want to ask those questions early on so you can kind of flush out, yeah, I don't want to work there. Or, yeah, this is really cool. How do I get there? What do I have to do? Right.
Yeah. When you look back at how you spent your time growing up, when you think about school, activities, interests, what do you feel had the biggest long-term impact?
Interesting. All the different things when I was growing up, I would say I think it's my parents. I don't know. They were, like I said, they were involved, but they weren't like, over my shoulder kind of thing. But I think seeing them come here as an immigrant, working hard, literally with nothing from the ground up, was motivating for me. And a little bit of like pressure of like, hey, like you gotta, as I always say, like the next generation should improve upon the last generation. And that was like all I thought about. I was like, okay, yeah, my parents never went to university. They didn't have the opportunity and the money, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, now I have this opportunity. I better do it. I better do it well. So that was kind of was always in the back of my mind as a kid, is just that immigrant mentality and like, I better do better. So that's kind of, I would say, the biggest thing for me.
Interesting, because when I think about your two children, it looks like one of the things that is introduced in their lives is competitive sports.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so is there a little bit of that the next generation do better than the last? Is that showing up for you in terms of it being a missing piece in your life?
100%. I don't know if that came up in the conversation with Tom, maybe not, but for me, I think I said that earlier too. Like that for me, if I look back, that's the one thing I wish I had done. And I didn't realize that until now, right? With my kids doing competitive sports, mostly my daughter, my son's still kind of in the development level, but she's been doing competitive swimming for her third year now. So she started at 8. And I never had that. And the stuff I'm seeing that she's learning in terms of perseverance and grit is something I never had. Like to be competitive at that age and to understand, hey, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. I got to work hard to win it. It doesn't just come to me. Was stuff that I think you don't get outside of competitive sport. And for sure, that you've hit the button right on is like that's the difference because yes, I went to university. I would say, like, we had a lot of opportunities growing up because we were already here. My parents were established themselves. Kids are having the same thing now, right? They're here. They have all these opportunities. But the only thing I would say that was missing for me was that competitive sport. And what that teaches you is huge in terms of like being a team player, right? And all that. It's just, I really wish I had that as a kid because I think that would be another level of just skills that you get.
You know, it's never too late.
To do a competitive sport. I don't know what sport that would be, but you're right. It's never too late. You're right, but I don't know about that.
We'll take it offline and do a brainstorm. What sport is most relevant to Yvonne?
Yeah.
So you've led teams and managed large scale business strategies. What's something leadership taught you that school never could?
Yeah, school never teaches you how to manage people at all. I think the MBA kind of touches a little bit on like group projects and how to manage that, which is difficult in an MBA because everyone's at the same level. There's no manager here, there's no boss, and you got to manage having to influence people in the MBA. But when you get into the work life, it is different. School doesn't teach you about actual true leadership, and leadership is different forms. Leadership can be like very structured, like you've got direct reports, okay, fine. But then there's leadership where you might not have direct reports, or you're trying to lead up, manage up. That's a term we all have probably heard, and you don't learn that in school. So that is something that takes time to learn because you actually really don't know how you're going to behave until you're in that situation and you learn from it, right? Like, okay, that did not work. Why did that not work? And how do I adjust myself? Or if you don't know what to do, I do it a lot where I watch people that are successful that I think are good leaders and what are they doing that are the reasons that I think they're good leaders. So I do a lot of like observation and copy. That's fine. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, you touched on it with MBA. I was just talking to a woman that's going to school for law school. And when you're in group work environments, you have individuals that want to be there, that are eager, which is different from the work environment where sometimes you have eager employees, but you don't have eager employees. And there's a cultural element to it where uh, you obviously have to get the most out of them. But the managing up thing is really insightful and important in terms of managing expectations, whoever you're reporting to, but also serving as like somebody your team needs to believe in and trust in. And it's a weird, interesting dynamic being in the middle there, right? You got to
Yeah.
please both
Yes.
people, and it's
Yes.
an interesting art as we were talking about before in terms of that balance. So that
Yes.
resonated with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of us are in the middle. Like, let's be honest. I'm not on track to be a CEO here, so we're all.
How do you manage performance with people, especially in high pressure environments?
Yeah, I think for me it's clarity, right? Communication is key. And again, like you kind of learn that as you go through your career. So I'm in retail, it's very dynamic. It's changing all the time. Things are happening outside of our, macroeconomic conditions that are impacting us all the time. So things are constantly changing. And that's the thing in retail that I've learned. And so you have to manage people's performance with clarity, right? So you need to set expectations. And day to day things can change in terms of priority. Like yesterday, I said this was priority. Now today it's this. But you just need to explain, I think, to people that, this is what you're doing. So that's the clarity piece of like, this is why it's important. This is why we're doing it. And that usually gets the buy-in that you need in order to get the performance you need, right? So if you don't get buy-in from people, they're not going to do it. And then you don't get the performance you need. So it always goes back to clear communication is key. Yeah.
No, well put. When you strip away titles and roles, how do you define success for yourself today?
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, as I'm going through my journey, I don't really care about titles anymore because that is different depending on what organization you go to. So, success for me is enjoying the work. Twofold. Let's be honest, is pay's got to be there. That's just table stakes. So I have a certain kind of threshold I'm trying to get to survive my day to day life. That has to be there. So check. Okay. Then it's like, am I enjoying the work? Am I passionate? And do I care about it? I've been in a lot of roles where I didn't have that. Pay's there, but I don't really care. Like I don't care about this work or I'm not bought into the vision. And that over time, you can do that for some time, but then over time that can wear on you and it's like you lose the passion. So success is like liking the work, liking the organization, aligning with whatever goals and vision that company is going towards is important. Very important.
What part of your journey do you think shaped your confidence the most?
What part of my journey?
Yeah. Was there a pivotal moment?
Um, that's interesting. I don't know if it was a specific moment. I would say I've had like so many different roles and the ability for me to learn something quickly is something I've learned, I guess. So because I'm like a jack of all trades, like that is something that you need to flex on. And that goes back to almost school, like you said, right? Like it's where you can't learn 100%. You got to figure out what are the key things you need to do to be successful. So that's something that I'm constantly having to use is to adjust my focus to make sure I'm, again, putting the kilojoules of energy into the right spaces.
Absolutely. When you think about being a mother, how has that impacted your life, maybe as a leader and just as a human being in your perspective on life?
Huge. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're a parent too. I mean, it gives you a lot of perspective, right? Being a parent, I think it grounds you in your priorities. So, hey, work is vital. Your career is important for sure in order to do the things you want to do in life. But at the end of the day, what's important is actually the family. So that is the main priority. It has changed for sure. what I've done in my career. I'm not saying it's held me back, but for sure I've made different decisions in order to make sure that I'm here for the kids when they need me, especially at this young age. So it has definitely shaped that for myself. And then outside of that, just how I interact with coworkers and employees or whatever is different too, because I have a different perspective on family and life. I'm a bit more, I would say, what's the word? Flexible or open, I guess. I think I've worked for a lot of, so as an engineer, I'm just going to say in the oil and gas industry, worked for mostly males. And in that industry and in that company, a lot of the men were leading the career, and a lot of their wives actually didn't work. And so I had a very different leadership exposure there versus now at Canadian Tire. It just is quite different. I see a lot of female leaders, a lot of young leaders, younger than myself, that are, levels above me. And so that's actually really refreshing. It kind of has changed the way I see the career. Cause I think at that point at my last company, I was like, oh gosh, like for me to move up, I gotta really sacrifice things. Um, but coming now into this space, it's quite different. I've realized like, no, that's not how it works. You got to be able to balance. Yeah.
Right. Work-life balance, critical for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, we've finished the formal part of this. Do you mind participating in the lightning round?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
All right, so these are just quick questions. First thing that comes to you, okay?
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Something you believed in your 20s that you no longer believe.
That I no longer believe. The smartest person in the room will not win.
Okay.
Not about being smart anymore.
Right. Good answer.
Talking about careers, I'm sure there's other things I have, but that's in my mind fast. Yeah.
Skill you picked up later in life that you wish you learned earlier.
Multitasking, like I'm a queen at multitasking now. Like I think you back to your question on family, right? Like I'm a mother of multitask. So
I've seen the calendars.
you've seen the calendars. Yeah.
One piece of advice you actually ignored, but you now understand. This could be in life or work.
One piece of advice I ignored. I would say it's like earlier on, I think it's also culturally was like don't challenge your elders or seniors or whatever you want to say. So people kind of above you in quotation, either in age or in rank, call it kind of that respect, which I did and didn't at the same time. But I get why they said that. But yeah, you have to have the bravery to challenge when it's
Okay. A small habit that's had a big impact on your career.
small. I don't know if it's small. I would say my organization skills. I actually said that the other day, like I should be an EA. Like I am a master of organization, and it's a habit I carry through my career, and it's very important to be organized. Yes.
Yeah, good. I wish I had a little bit of that in my life. If you could if you could go back and add one activity to your younger years, what would it be?
I think we have that answer. Yeah, I would have done a competitive sport outside of school. So did it in school, but I mean real competitive.
This was my test to see if you would actually name the sport, but we'll talk about this offline. Okay, who was better at managing school life balance in university, you or Tom?
Me.
You? Okay. If we could drop you back into your 18-year-old self for one conversation, what would you tell her about confidence, identity, and the future?
I probably would have said, don't worry about learning everything and getting it all right, because that's not what the world is about. And that what you're doing in school may not be what you end up doing in the real world. I think it was very linear to me in the early days.
Okay, good. I want to thank you very much for your time. I know you're incredibly busy. We booked this hour because you would have the house for an hour, so we're going to keep it within that hour. I've known you to be a very humble, intelligent individual who has a great sense of humor, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better here with your way of thinking and all that. And you've given us a lot to think about. So thanks for your time, Yvonne. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. This was fun.
Yvonne, thanks again for such a thoughtful and honest conversation. What stood out to me in this one was how clearly Yvonne's story shows that confidence is not always built through certainty. Sometimes it is built through adjustment, through realizing that what worked in one season of life will not necessarily work in the next, and being willing to evolve because of it. One of the strongest themes in this conversation was the difference between working hard and learning how to work smart. Yvonne talked about going from being a strong student in high school to getting hit with the reality of engineering at university, where trying to learn everything simply was not possible. What she came to understand, and what has clearly stayed with her, is that success is often less about mastering every detail and more about learning what matters most, where to focus your energy, and how to prioritize it in a way that actually moves you forward. Another theme that came through was that careers are rarely as linear as we imagine them to be when we are young. Yvonne started in engineering, moved to business, and built a path across technical, commercial, and leadership roles. And what I appreciated was that she did not describe those shifts as abandoning one identity for the other. Instead, she framed them as adding tools to the toolbox. That perspective is such an important reminder for everyone listening who feels pressure to get their future exactly right the first time. There was also a really honest thread in the conversation around relationships and the role they play in shaping a career. Not just networking when you need something, but building real connections over time, internally, externally, and with people who can give you perspective when decisions get difficult. Yvonne made the point that career decisions often happen behind closed doors, and that the relationships you build along the way can matter just as much as the work itself. I thought that was a very real and valuable insight. And then maybe one of the most meaningful parts of the episode was hearing her reflect on what she wishes she had leaned into earlier, particularly around competitive sports, perseverance, and learning how to lose, adjust, and keep going. That part of the conversation was not really about sports at all. It was about how the things we do when we are young shape the way we handle challenge, pressure, teamwork, and resilience later in life. Yvonne's story is also a reminder that success changes as we grow. Early on, it might look like getting the offer, earning the salary, or choosing the safe option. Later, it starts to look more like alignment, finding work that fits your strengths, your values, your life stage, and the kind of person you want to be. And I think that is what makes this conversation so relevant for students, recent grads, and young professionals. You don't need to have every answer right away. You do not need to get every decision perfect, but you do need to stay reflective enough to keep learning, keep adjusting, and keep building a life that fits who you are becoming. Thanks again for listening to Flashback Files. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with someone who might need to hear it. We'll see you on the next one.